I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I am going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
Pardon me, I don't mean to stare, but I think I know you.
I'm afraid you're mistaken.
No, of course I know you, Renee. You look just the same. Tell me, do they still call you Renee?
Yes, so no one's called me that for a long time.
Don't you know me?
Hello and welcome to the Don't Know Her podcast. I'm Michael.
And I am Cyril.
I wish.
I'm Scott, of course. Who else would it be? You would never do this with someone else, despite what you said in the last podcast, over and over and over again.
James has a very special place in my heart, and he's welcome to replace you whenever he wants.
Go again, see? Relentless.
And we are back again to talk about an actor who we definitely think deserves more, and specifically in this Oscar special episode, deserved an Oscar nomination this year. I mean, nomination win, we can get into whether we think she should have won, but there is no doubt she should have been nominated. I think she should have won. It is the legend, the icon, the Irish goddess, Ruth Negga.
Yes, and very importantly as well, so Oscar special, of course. This episode will come out before the Oscars happen. Correct. Yeah.
It'll be coming out on St. Patrick's Day.
So but that's where I was going. But you can take it, you Irish devil jumping in. Go on.
No, it's just like it's a special, like, happy St. Patrick's Day to all you listeners. If you're not listening to it on St. Patrick's Day, happy St. Patrick's Day to you anyway.
There's no avoiding it. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.
But yes, the Oscars are due to happen. We've had the nominations. We are in the year 2022. It looks like Ariana DeBose is going to win Best Supporting Actress for West Side Story, but it is Ruth Negga in Passing, which we really were shocked. Well, maybe not even shocked that she wasn't nominated, but shocked that people would be able to pick 5 people or even one person and not think of Ruth Negga, who you've heard gloriously from a little snippet already in Passing.
Yeah, and no, I was shocked because if you buy into, well, you don't have to buy into it, how the precursor awards work leading up to the Oscars, certainly the Oscar nominations, as it informs a lot. And I would have assumed that Ruth Negga was, if not the strongest competitor who was going to run the whole race, certainly in the top 2. But alas, not. She has been neglected, that nomination, which it isn't everything. We understand it's not everything. This amazing performance still exists, of course. However, it's a piece of shit that she wasn't nominated. It just feels silly. It feels like a strange omission to me.
Passing just gives her an opportunity to showcase so much more than she's been able to in other films. And regardless of that, just like create such an amazingly vivid character and kind of the definition of a supporting character. There's no disservice to any of the other the other actual nominees. Like Ariana DeBose, that's Anita in West Side Story is also a very good definition of a supporting character. And she's terrific in that. And I'll be celebrating a queer Best Supporting Actress winner. So I've nothing bad to say against that, but Ruth Negga and what Passing is as a film and what it's talking about just seems so exciting, and it's such a shame that the Oscars couldn't propel it to more people.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the answer for us is going to be very different on this one, so definitely worth asking. You have kinship there, but where did you first come to Ruth Negga?
Ruth Negga, so you're dead right. Growing up in Ireland, she would have been, I remember her on TV. I specifically remember her in this TV show, which is very celebrated in Ireland, and like Irish people would know even if they watched it or not.
Angel?
No, they I mean, I've not seen Ballycliffe Angel, but I can't imagine it having anyone non-white in Ballycliffe Angel. It's like a fairy tale, kind of old-fashioned Ireland. I mean, it did have a priest fall in love with a woman, a Catholic priest. So there was scandal. It was pretty progressive, but no, it was Love Hate, which was this gangster drugs drama on RT, the National Irish TV station. Really, really great show. Ran for quite a long time. Had loads of great actors giving loads of great parts. So loads of celebrities-ish in Ireland. So yeah, she would have been famous for that. She played a love interest. It's not the most exciting role, but she tugged on the heartstrings, I would say.
Okay.
She really would stand up and be like, no, you shouldn't get involved in this drug life and this thug life and all this sort of thing. She didn't last long in that, but because of that, and, she would do all sorts of things, lots of theatre. I wouldn't just know her from that point on.
Yeah. Okay, good. To me, she's still someone who's incredibly new to me. So my answer to this is different from any before. My introduction to her was her being nominated for the film Loving.
I thought you were going to say Passing, which...
but I still hadn't seen until leading up to record this episode. So I was aware of her. I'd seen the clips. And then I remember her being in Ad Astra, which is the only other one that I hadn't, that I'd seen a good bit in advance of doing this. But that doesn't really count because I can't remember watching Ad Astra and being like, wow. I was just aware, oh, here she is. So it's actually recording for this has been eye-opening. It was watching Passing. When Passing came out a few months ago, I was bowled over and immediately like, okay, I need to now go back and watch what this very, very talented woman has done before.
There will, and this will come out, a lot of the films will have a nostalgic value to me, or when I talk about her, Ruth, I feel like there's a nostalgic, or there's also a nationalist, sort of like patriotic thing. Like, I absolutely love Ruth Negga. I think she's incredible. But I think I would believe that even if it wasn't to do with, say, Loving and Passing. I think I'd love her anyway. So I'm holding my hands up straight away to tell everybody there's a bias.
Well, I'm going to make a very bold statement from the get-go, hopefully for anyone who's wondering that, should I listen? Hopefully this is what keeps you going if you too were not that familiar with Ruth Negga. And it's not, I don't think there's a lot of fun in comparing everyone we've spoken about before, and I don't think this is exclusively the case. I think you could argue other people would contend for this, but watching her films, I did wonder to myself if she was the most naturally gifted performer we've spoken about so far.
It's hard to, like, when you think comparing her, but she certainly is up there with, say, Toni Collette or Imelda Staunton, or these people who morph into who they're playing in a, like, Ruth Negga is, to me, one of the most glamorous women in the planet. Like, she could, like, turn around and, like, when she goes to the Met Gala, when she turns up at things, you're like, whoa, this woman is spectacular looking. But then, like Imelda Staunton and Olivia Colman, those sorts of people, she will go into a character, and none of that. Not only does it not matter, or it's like, well, you couldn't even remember that Ruth Negga could be like glossed up like that, because she's hidden behind, not even hidden, but she's just transformed to a character. Even when we're looking at Passing, where she plays a very glamorous person, it's such a different. It's not Ruth Negga. It is. She's transformed to someone else. So yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. This little Ruth Negga love fest.
Yes, I'm glad to have said it.
Okay, so before we get into specific movies, let me give a little rundown on this magnificent person. Ruth was born in Ethiopia in 1982. Her mother and father met working in a hospital together, which, I mean, there's no facts to this, but I imagine it as the most romantic meeting of people. Her mother, who is Irish, and the family moved back to Ireland when she was 4. She moved back to Limerick, for all the Limerick listeners out there. And then she went to England for secondary school, before returning to Ireland to study acting in the Samuel Beckett Centre at Trinity College, no less. And she got into professional acting really quickly. So she is Olivier nominated, which is a big theatre award like the Tonys for the UK, or specifically for London, for those who don't know, for production of Duck. She was nominated for Best Newcomer. That's in 2003. She does her first film, Capital Letters, in 2004, which is quickly followed by a horror movie, Isolation, and then Neil Jordan's Breakfast on Pluto in 2005. Neil Jordan is quoted as saying, "I didn't know much about her when she came to the casting, but the moment I saw her act, I decided to change the script so that she could appear in the movie." Now, we will maybe touch upon this again when we talk about Breakfast on Pluto. I've no idea what he had to change about that character. And I'm a little bit nervous. It's probably mostly focused on race, what he was thinking of there, which actually doesn't play a part of her character. It's just more his thinking, which is horrible to think about. But he was that taken by Ruth Negga that he had to have her in this movie. And then between 2005 and 2011, she does Love is the Drug, Love Hate. These are big Irish shows. Also Misfits and Shirley, the Shirley Bassey biopic for TV. Okay. She's also appearing in the London stage in Phaedra with Helen Mirren, and with Rory Kinnear and Hamlet at the National Theatre, and in the Old Vic in Playboy of the Western World. But film roles strangely seem quite quiet between these times. She does appear in The Samaritan with Samuel L. Jackson, and as a doctor in World War Z. But neither kind of set the world alight. She does appear in Iona, this Scottish film that we will talk about, is nominated for a Scottish BAFTA for Best Actress. And also quite remarkably in this era, she has captured, a performance of hers is captured for the film 12 Years a Slave, but it's deleted and cut out. Heartbreaking, the way she talks about that. And you can only imagine, there's this Oscar-winning film and her part is cut from it. But then we have 2016 where Loving comes. So Loving, where she plays Mildred Loving. She is Oscar nominated for Best Actress. That year, and we guess can touch upon this again, is very competitive basically for nominations. There are nominees that easily could have made it in ahead of her, and I'm so glad that she was nominated for such a really striking performance.
Yes.
That is followed by a glorified cameo in Ad Astra, James Gray's movie, and lovely voice work in two films, Angela's Christmas and its sequel, which are these animated Irish movies, which are very lovely. Oh. And then Passing, most recently. So, still her filmography is very, let's say concise or short. I cannot wait to see more. But she also has, and many people will know this, entered the Marvel Universe on TV in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's also has been a part of the supernatural adventure Preacher, which is a TV show with Dominic Cooper. I guess this is important to mention that her stage work, so she played Hamlet in The Gate in Dublin, which transferred to St. Anne's Warehouse in New York. And those lucky enough to be in New York can see her Lady Macbeth alongside Daniel Craig's Macbeth in Sam Gold's new version of Macbeth.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's so exciting.
Yeah. We've had Saoirse Ronan do her Lady Macbeth in London, and now we have Ruth.
Perfect. Let the Irish ladies take Lady Macbeth all the way.
So, let's talk about her Oscar-nominated film.
Sure.
Or Oscar-nominated performance, because strangely this film was shut out.
Interesting with what you were saying about it being a very competitive year, and she gets in for this performance, yet the film is not in elsewhere at the Oscars. It's unusual because I think it's really... it feels very, Oscar-y in many ways. It feels like an easy grab for a nomination beyond, certainly, Ruth's nomination. But it is no surprise that if you're going to pick anything from the film to celebrate that it is this astonishingly magnetic performance. It is brilliant. It's so brilliant. And I think for a long time, whilst I was aware of it at the Oscars, and like I said, that's where I became aware of her, I did have my friends saying to me that how brilliant she was. So I'm surprised that I didn't actually get to it until now. I don't know if I thought the film was going to be dry, but knowing Jeff Nichols' other work, I don't know why I would have thought that. I thought the film was really terrific as well, and I'm really glad to have seen it. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on without saying what it's about. You were giving quite a nice synopsis earlier, so I'll hand it back to you to tell us about Loving.
Oh yeah, of course. Loving is a story of Richard and Mildred Loving, who are married at a time where interracial marriages were not legally recognized. They were forced to leave the state of Virginia, which is where they were based, where he builds this home for them. And it's so, it's like the dream of like, you met someone, you fell in love, all your family, you have everyone around, he's building you this home.
I want to put the kitchen right back here.
Richard, stop this. I don't know what you're saying.
I bought it. This whole acre. I'm gonna build you a house.
Then the police come in the middle of the night and basically like, you're going to jail. Long story short, they have to move. And the story follows them as they take on the Supreme Court to be recognized legally as a married couple in their home state and to return home. It is based on a true story for those who are not aware. The film, and this is what I think is really striking about it, it is not leaning into what easily could be dramatic points of the story. So these two people are presented as just regular folk who happen to fall in love. It's also not played up as, they're taking on America. It's not like Bridge of Spies or the countless movies that have been made about, big stately things. It really focuses on them. And that, in itself, you get these amazing performances from Ruth Negga and also Joel Edgerton.
I got a call from a lawyer today.
Lawyer?
Mm-hmm. From the American Civil Liberties Union. Robert Kennedy told him to call us. We'll help your sister brush her teeth. They want to help with our case.
Well, we can't afford a lawyer.
They said they wouldn't charge us. We're going to go see him on Thursday. His name is Cohen.
And it's just so gorgeous. It's funny, like when I think of it now, obviously it is a very important movie, but it also is a romantic drama. It's about a couple, and their love surviving through something really, really horrific that you wouldn't even dream, like because of, my own privilege. I guess there is a whole thing I could say about same-sex marriage, but it is not in any way the same as what this couple went through. It is so beautiful. So yeah, but no, it doesn't lean into any of the stick, let's say, that a biopic would, that the Oscars would traditionally like. But I should flag that it made so much money in America in the box office.
Did it really?
Like, it did so well. Yeah, it opened at number 1 at the independent box office. Its opening weekend. Its screen average bet significantly Doctor Strange, which was out at the same time. It was had such a, and I can only imagine that's to do with the marketing and everything, but also the reviews, what, that story, how important it is and how it's told, and it's so like, it's just so beautiful. Like, Jeff Nichols done such a great job. So I highly recommend this movie. And it is, even though it sounds like a heavy kind of courtroom drama, it is not that. It is a beautiful portrait of love.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I think What stood out to me for a story like this is the passage of time in it is fascinating. So the film is around 2 hours long. Firstly, it doesn't feel that because of how it uses time. And often when films do this, it's weird and it's confusing. But basically, it sort of glides through time, and there's not really a huge amount of reasoning behind it, other than it's sort of going to probably these tentpole moments in their story of their battle. But it just glides into them, but it never feels jarring. It feels only appropriate. It carries the film along. It gives a lot of air, like, a lot of space, and you can feel, even though you've just gone from one moment to the next, it's not jarring. You feel like you have travelled there with them. It's really strange, and I haven't really encountered that in many things before. But it's really beautiful. I think its ever so slight downfall, and it's really not a big one because it doesn't hinder the film, is that there are moments which feel strangely Hollywood against a film which otherwise doesn't and feels very artistically focused. And that is when it's not focused on their characters. So maybe that was very intentional and that was the point. Like, these lawyers are there to maybe put on a bit of a show, and therefore the film around them, when they're on screen alone, it does feel a bit kind of Aaron Sorkin, but then it quickly turns back around. So I don't think that hinders it at all. I just find it ever so slightly jarring in the moment compared to this really kind of airy, beautiful film around it. I found it really moving. Their performances are both great, but she is incredible. She's so luminous, like earthy, but just full of light, incredibly charismatic for a character who's quite reserved and shy. It's really touching, and there's really, really beautiful moments. There's a bit where Michael Shannon turns up as a journalist, and how he is capturing them, photographing them, just living their life is really, really lovely. It's great. I'm so glad to have watched it.
And the moment when, we should say Richard Loving, played by Joel Egerton, is really, it's not very good at communicating. So, it is Mildred that is pushing most of the story forward in terms of progressing, being able to go back to Virginia. And when Michael Shannon is there, he is there to get information. He's there to tell this story because they need publicity to get, the country support, the public support. And this is the only moment in the movie this happens, he asks her about it, and her opening up, and she's so articulate.
The lawyers told us not to expect much.
You think you'll lose?
Well, yes. But I think it's all right. We may lose the small battles, but win the big war.
And it is a shame that I don't know many people that have seen it.
Yeah.
And in Ireland, for instance, it wouldn't have been a film that she would have been that would have been watched. It wouldn't have been oh, here's Ruth Negga. It's not Saoirse Ronan in Lady Bird, and that is interesting. Let's say.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think, well, I don't know. That's up there with some of the greatest performances, particularly in a biopic where too often it leans on, hair, makeup, Nicole Kidman, Jessica Chastain, or other such tics. But Ruth doesn't rely on any of those.
No, but this is an interesting counterpoint to why we're doing this episode, and that we think it's egregious perhaps that she's not nominated for Passing, is that this is an inspired nomination. Yeah. And it's 10 out of 10 to the Academy for nominating this film, because it is a quiet performance, but it is incredibly rich and layered, and therefore it's a case of, wow, this is amazing. This is an unusual choice for you. It doesn't feel grabby in the way that you normally expect from a lead acting nominee, but at the same time, when you watch it, you're like, well, duh, this is as good as screen acting can get. It's an easy recommend.
And on this, I guess, shall we talk about you've let me talk about another Irish person, so let's talk about the Scottish movie in her filmography.
We finally get to talk Scotland, and it's for something incredibly quiet.
It's very quiet, very... I don't want to say dark's the wrong word, but bleakish. Like, it's not a happy journey.
No, and I think it's the nature of it. The film is called Iona from 2015, directed by Scott Graham, who I think is a fairly celebrated indie filmmaker, but for very, very small films to this point so far. And Iona, by its title, is set on the Scottish island of Iona, where Ruth Negga and her son flee. So she was brought up on this island, and they return there from living in Glasgow to get away from an abusive partner.
That was my old bed.
And that one?
Elizabeth's. Daniel's daughter. Suppose she lives somewhere else now.
When did you live here?
When I was 15.
And from there, she's returning to this life that she had so wanted to get rid of. And specifically, it's religion. And it's the approach to religion which is very common and still to this day in isolated areas of Scotland, and you will find that very prevalent in the islands and the coastal towns of Scotland, that religion informs a huge amount about a community or an individual, and that's what this film's about. And you can understand if you're someone who has come from those places, not that I have personally, because I'm not from a community like that in Scotland, but you can understand wanting to escape it, that religion almost sucks any of the other energy of the air. And it's not that it's a bad place, there's a lot of hope there, they're a community that is very happy and like to live that way, but for her it didn't work. And she is nervous as her son starts to find his way into leaning on religion to deal with a horrible situation and circumstance that they've left. I don't think it's a great film, but I think I liked its ambition. I liked what it was doing. I did like the bleak nature of it. It had moments of kind of feeling a bit like a Terrence Malick film at times, as it kind of danced around this rugged scenery in Scotland. But then otherwise I can't think who else. What other filmmaker does it feel like? 'Cause there's distinctly something else in there when it is kind of the oppressive nature of the community. You then get a different... once it feels very spacious and out in this kind of, open feel, and then it can feel very claustrophobic. So I like that jarring nature to the film. And I like the storytelling in what it was trying to do, and I liked its perspective. I just maybe think it could have been better, but I did like what I saw.
Yeah, and I think you've pretty much summed it up well. Question I have, how is her accent, as Ruth has a Scottish accent?
The interesting thing about Scottish accents, but you could say it for anywhere, is that they vary so much. I mean, my accent I don't think necessarily depicts where I'm from, so it feels almost strange for me to look at a Scottish accent and work out whether it sounds right or not, especially an island accent, and then maybe drifting into Glaswegian. To my ear, it was perfect, but I think that's something that is a pattern with her. Her in Loving, her accent to my ear, I'm not an American, certainly I'm not aware of Virginia accents. To me, it is impeccable. Passing, impeccable. Every single time, I just think she gets it, and it's something that, again, must come very naturally to her. In this, as far as I'm concerned, if I'd have watched that and knew nothing about her, she's Scottish.
Yeah. She also, and this is true of all of the films we're going to talk about, she is... Like, the opening is silent almost, and it's just her face doing a lot. My favourite moment of the whole film is she goes to a ceilidh, or dance. I don't know if they call it ceilidh now. I feel like I'm...
Very Jack and Rose moment. It felt like Titanic, the perspective.
Much, exactly. But her quietly taking part in it, so being reserved at the front at the start, being like, maybe this is something I shouldn't be part of, and then fully embracing that, and... It's abruptly ended her enjoyment, but the joy, as you said earlier, she's luminous in this film as well.
I mean, I think often when we talk about performers on this podcast, something we come back to when we're drawn into a performer is the eyes. I mean, that's a fairly standard thing to say. but her eyes tell so much. She's incredibly restrained here, but you can feel the weight of the past in her eyes. And she also brings that in other films that we'll talk about, or Loving. But it's there, it's bubbling away beneath the surface, and it just adds to this quiet but undeniable charisma and screen presence that she has.
Iona in particular, when she comes, like there's all this, it's quite heavy, and something bad has happened, both in her past on the island and with her son, more recently. But you also know there is a glimmer, or there's something where she either has enjoyed it, or that like she's part of, like had the agency to create some of these problems, and she's going to create more problems because she wants to enjoy life as well. I think it's a really complex sort of kind of positioning of putting that character or her performance, and in passing it's done so brilliantly. But in Iona, it's like, I cannot wait to see what this character does. And to be honest, I imagine that's a lot of Ruth Negga putting that in that role. Because a lot of I would say the other actors are all very good, but it is her you want to know what is going on, what is she going to do, what does she want, because you have an idea, like, she's come back here, she's chosen to. This is thrilling to see what is going to happen. And you know what? It mostly is. It mostly is because it's a joy to watch her. Sadly, we do have to talk about films where she does not have agency to do much. I feel like maybe this is because when this film was coming out, Ad Astra, I was so excited because she was like the third build in it. So it was Brad Pitt, Tommy Lee Jones, and Ruth Negga, and Liv Tyler was then. And I was like, great, like this is a post-Oscar nomination sci-fi film. They probably need her to be in it, for finance and all this sort of thing. James Gray, kind of funny because his films, I don't know, they have such a muted response, particularly in like the UK and Ireland. I don't know what it happens, but like say The Immigrant still hasn't had a release here, even though it has Marion Cotillard and Joaquin Phoenix in it. But Ad Astra is a sort of, and I already know, Scott, that you enjoy the movie. I find it like the most sort of dry, serious, daddy issue film. Like, I don't need to see another cis man talk about first world problems. Particularly first world problems of, I'm going to have to travel to wherever in space to find my long lost father. And then on top of that, have an actor, Ruth Negga, who I absolutely love, come in for 3 moments at most. And now she does deliver, so she's someone who was born in space and has never come back. So she has quite a nice little moment.
I am responsible for more than 1,100 people here on this base. Now I need to know, are we gonna die?
But that's it. Like, that's kind of all she has. There's loads of lovely things which I'm going to leave you to say about Ad Astra. But for me, if it never existed, I might be happier.
Oh my God, that is too scathing. It's interesting. You spoke about coming to it with excitement from the trailer or promotional stuff being third build. I was not excited to see this film from the trailer or any of the promotional stuff. I like space movies, but I often feel like I don't need another one, and I don't know what it is. I think, space is too expansive and terrifies me enough that I'm just like, oh God, I don't really want to go there again. We have seen films like this before. It's another space film with a lot of space in it. There is a lot, it is kind of a fairly quiet film.
Voiceover, all that.
Exactly.
Man
Voiceover
thinking about existentialist crisis of like, oh my God.
Yeah, there is literal images that you could lift from this and place them into Gravity or 2001, and you'd be like, yeah, sure, that makes sense that it's there. And it is about daddy issues. I mean, as you're saying all this, I'm like, yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I mean, at the time, the response was incredibly divided. But I found it often very thrilling, and I wasn't expecting to find it thrilling. I am very much of the Brad Pitt church. I think he's amazing, and I especially love when he does the quieter, pensive stuff. I think he does it better than any other, certainly Hollywood, certainly anyone of his stardom, male performers of his stardom. He, again, there's a lot going on in his face and his eyes. And I've read reviews where they've been like, ugh, this is as dull a Brad Pitt performance as we've seen since like Interview with the Vampire or something. It's like, but there's so much going on. To me, there is so much going on, and he manages that restraint very well. So I find watching his performance thrilling. I find some of the set pieces really inventive and exciting. I think the script is a bit hokey at times, and that does not help it. But overall, it's really beautiful, and I found it visually very poetic.
Yeah, and Max Richter's music is incredible.
It is.
That's my main takeaway of the film, is that score. I agree with you also about Brad Pitt. If I was to be told we're going to watch a film with Brad Pitt having daddy issues, this isn't the film I would be wanting to see.
And fair enough, it wouldn't be the film I'd be looking to see either. However, I do think it's terrific. And I think if it's the kind of film that you'd be willing to buy into, it can be incredibly rewarding. I will also say I watched this for the first time on a plane, so I didn't go and see it in the cinema. And you can often have a very different experience from sitting and being so engaged in something on a plane. I think that was a good way for me to watch it because it just focused me in on it. Made me think I wouldn't feel the same way this time. However, I did. So I think it's very strong. However, I do think it's very sad how criminally underused she is and Natasha Lyonne is, and
oh my god,
and
literally sad at a desk.
It is a
and
joke.
Liv Tyler,
and Liv Tyler as well.
It's very frustrating for that reason. I saw it I think I saw it in the cinema, and I watched it at home, and both times, honestly, it's just not for me. But I love sci-fi films, so I'm not sure why. I think it's because it's so it's such a cis white man having a problem that really there's so many other problems in the world. Why would we focus on this? But it is all the things you've described, and I'm not saying it's not. I just think it's so hollow that I can't attach anything to it.
But I think then we're kind of on the same page, even though one of us likes it and one of us doesn't. Is that there's certain films I would always go to bat for if someone said they didn't like it, and I know everything's subjective, but I would be like, you are wrong if you think this is bad. I would never go to bat for this film in that way. I can understand why somebody wouldn't like it. And not think anything like, oh, you don't get it. No, I think I maybe don't get why it could be perceived as bad or whatever. I think you could argue both sides, and both are valid.
A film which is definitely not nothing to me, but I'm a little bit nervous to hear what you made of it. And I feel like this will have such an interesting conversation. Is Breakfast on Pluto. So Neil Jordan's film starring Cillian Murphy as Patrick Kitten Brady, which is told, I think it's 32 chapters of this character's life, from being abandoned at the doorstep of a priest, played by Liam Neeson, up until however many years later, when now it's Cillian Murphy and living with Ruth Negga in London. It is a layered, complex... This is the thing about Breakfast on Pluto. It is, with one hand, being very casual and like a fairy tale sort of... It's being casual how it's telling this story. It is a fairy tale. It is not interested in detail, yet it is interested in covering so many very explosive and triggering and layered themes. So we have the troubles in the north, we have sexuality, we have gender, we have religion, we have women, we have you name it nearly, and it is in this film. Weirdly not race, even though it's what we were talking about earlier with Neil Jordan talking about having to update Ruth Negga's character. But it is so loaded with material and themes. So Kitten, which I guess I should have said earlier before going into that spiel, Kitten is, well, it's not explicitly said in the book or the film. I have read the book, which is Patrick McCabe, which was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in, I think, like the mid-90s. I could be wrong, or late 90s, around that time. And but I think by today, we were looking at it today, we'd refer to Kitten as a trans character. Obviously played by Cillian Murphy. The film itself is not that interested. This is the thing, I just don't understand why Neil Jordan made this movie or why this book exists, really. And yet, for people like me, like, you know, queer people, and maybe specifically Irish queer people, it does have such a special place in terms of when it was released and what it meant. Like, there wasn't characters like that. Cillian Murphy is so good. Like, it's such a, I don't know, it's like a tender performance of a character who is so vulnerable yet is so strong. And to see that strength in such a character is so rare. And particularly to see a character like that, I mean, there are, you know, low points, high points, all this sort of thing for this character. But ultimately, you do not see them the victim in the way we usually see queer characters of that time and earlier in the 90s. So I remember feeling empowered watching Kitten go through that story. And I remember watching Cillian Murphy specifically and thinking, it's okay to be different. Nowadays, 20 years on, it has changed an awful lot. And there was actually a staged musical production where they had cast a cis man in the role of Kitten. Actually, I should say, in the book it's Pussy, that's the name, but they would not do that in the film. And actually quite a lot of the explicitly sexual content from the book is not in the film, which in itself is fascinating to dehumanize that character that way, unnecessary, because she's like a sex worker in it, and you know, there's very clear sexual undertones, but it's very much hidden. But this musical, it didn't happen. It didn't happen for a few reasons, you know, COVID being one of them, but it had so much controversy that I don't think they could ever mount it again. So we may never see this musical on stage, but also I feel like it's a thing of its time, the 90s, and it doesn't need to be redone anymore. But yeah, so I have a real personal love for this film. It also has so many great Irish actors in it, from like Ruth McCabe, who plays his adoptive mum, Stephen Ray as this like magician, sort of like charming man. Like, this is the thing about it. So Neil Jordan also did The Crying Game, which is quite infamous now for having a scene where a trans character, or what we identify now as a trans character, is revealed to have a penis, and the cis man vomits in reaction to this. And it also, to make it even more complicated, The Crying Game ends with a happy ending, which is very rare for a film at that time with those people. So just to flag that it's not as simple as black and white as that. Having said all that, this is made by the same person, Neil Jordan, and I don't know if he will have learned anything about representation, or I'm not even sure if he feels any sort of responsibility, and it doesn't really come across in the film. He's not that interested in the realities of a trans experience, but then he's not interested in the realities of the troubles in the North in this film, or anybody. But that is kind of part of the film.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know a huge amount about Neil Jordan, but it is curious that he has now told two stories. Two of his most then famous films are centered on trans characters. Does he have any sort of connection? Is that just probably not coincidence, just feeling like he is the man for the task, an Irish set tale dealing with a trans character?
Well, that's interesting. You know where I think this comes from, and I could be totally wrong, but I think there's in Ireland, there's the done thing and the normal people and all of this society, and then there's the other. And I think he identifies with the other. And
Okay.
I think that's his way
Got
into
you.
that sort of character. I don't know that for a fact, but that happens. Like when we think about The Butcher Boy, which we talked about for Fiona
Yeah.
Shaw, that is also another film, weirdly, both adapted from Patrick McCabe stories, but about somebody not conforming to the norm in a in Ireland, and specifically like between the north and the south of Ireland, and by the north and south I mean the Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. So that's where I think that comes from, and you'll see someone like Enda Walsh, the playwright, and I believe he's the director. He adapted Disco Pigs with Cillian Murphy. Has a very similar sensibility. It's just a shame that there's male heterosexual voices that are kind of leading that charge. I mean, there are other very exciting people that do it, but they get a bigger platform.
Yeah. Well, I think that's maybe that's how I'll kind of look on this film, because it's hard now. Things have changed a lot. This film was made in 2005. It is now 2022. We've been in an incredibly different place within the past 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, with vocalizing correctly representation, especially around trans representation. But even if you can put that aside and look in this film, it is just, I think, that these voices probably weren't even correct. Now, there's so much to me that's interesting in this film. I think it's full of ideas and it's full of momentum, and that happens from the off. Is that it's chaptered in a way that does propel the story along, and you feel very swept into it.
But also, like the very opening, and this is ingrained in my mind. Like we meet Kitten as like an adult. She's walking by, and somebody like a builder wolf whistles.
What's the chance of a bid tonight?
Oh, why, yes, of course, boys. I'll leave the front door open and you can all troop in and give me a job. Not up to it then, you innocent, shovel-wielding, horny-handed sons of the native sod. Not many people are, Munchkin. Not many people can take the tale of Patrick Braden, a.k.a. St. Kitten, who strutted the catwalks, face slit by a halo of flashbulbs as, "Ooh," she shrieked. "I told you from my best side, darlings."
What a shame now with my more, I don't know what to say, learned or mature or whatever mindset. It's like, why could that not have been developed further? Because Kitten's not really developed as a character.
Exactly. So that's kind of then what I was getting at, is with all of this behind it, I think this film could be made now with the right performer. And to echo what you said, I think Cillian Murphy is really terrific in this in terms of a transformative performance. However, if we were to look at it now and, you know, a more suitable performer in the lead role and a more thoughtful writer, director combo with it, I think the film could be a lot more than what it was for me watching it for the first time. And that being the main thing is that you feel for a start like, wow, this woman, this character is going to be electric, and just really let down throughout it. In that so much happens, it should be thrilling, like all of the journey that she goes on the whole time. And I don't know if I'm then looking at it wrong as this trans character leaning into kind of unfortunate or old-fashioned tropes of a kind of downtrodden woman, and therefore it just makes the character really dull to spend time with. The film dragged for me, unfortunately. It's 2 hours, and even though it's very propulsive, it felt like 3 hours. But I'm really glad I've seen it. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and I just think maybe with a reworking, it could be more interesting. But great performances, including Ruth Negga when she's in it. She does lift it up. Her presence is really welcome, and I think it brings the spirit of the film alive and shakes up for a bit. So it's nice when she kind of pops up.
But she is, I mean, the thing, I guess watching it for her specifically now, she is in this, and this is the sort of problem I have with the Danish girl in particular, the main like cis female character is so stereotypically what a supporting woman would be in this story. So she's nagging her partner who's involved in the troubles. She is pregnant. She has to deal with, where am I going to have an abortion? Then she has to deal with being this, woman in the town that's shamed. And there's all of this stuff, and it's just like, come on. Like, I like, it really frustrates me. Like, why, if you can open the door so much for arguably, like, a person who I would imagine someone like Neil Jordan would see as a cis man, equal to him, like Kitten, but he does not see this other character who's born a woman equal. And I'm just like, what is wrong with these people? So I found she is everything you say. She's very good, and it's great when she turns up. But I actually could not believe rewatching it and be like, oh no, she is doing exactly what a cis female character would do in these stories. And it made me think worse on the film as a whole.
Yeah.
And it actually made me think, like, we shouldn't be adapting this story again in terms of a musical or remaking it. We should just leave it. Like, it's from the past. It has nothing really to offer us anymore.
No, except, there is a lot of interesting stuff in there. So, but that's maybe the point, is it leave it in the past.
Oh, and rewatch it. I love this film,
yeah.
and I'll never not love it because of the place it has for me personally. But I don't think it's for like new audiences. I wouldn't be like telling people to go see, unless you were studying, Irish cinema or something. But even in Ireland, it wouldn't have been a film it was not like The Butcher Boy, which was financially huge. People did not flock to see Breakfast on Pluto.
Okay.
It was not that. It was still I remember it being kind of talked about as not submersive. That's not the word they would have used, but it's like a subversive even. It would have been spoken of like, oh, that's out, but we don't have to see it, or good for Cillian Murphy doing that. But there's it was not a hit like so many Irish movies, and at that I'm going to put down definitely to homophobia.
Okay, fair.
The Go See Crying Game, an IRA sort of bombing with Stephen Ray, and they know there's a secret, and all the way they horribly sold that movie, kind of basing it on like exposing a trans character.
Yeah.
None of that happened, and so to be like openly like, look, here's a trans character and a trans story, they was not interested in it. Which is a shame. So weirdly, like Ruth doesn't have many like Irish movies in the same way. Like she doesn't have a Brooklyn or Belfast. But not that I'm fine with Belfast. It's grand. I'm not one of those people that hate it. But I also am glad she's not in it because it'd be better use of her time elsewhere. Which really nicely, I guess, brings us to Passing. So I remember when it was announced it was being made that Tessa Thompson, Ruth Negga were going to play these not long lost, which were like old friends who reconnect, written and directed by Rebecca Hall, based on a novella. And I just remember being like, okay, wow. And it's at like the 1920s. I don't know why, but I was like, this is going to be great. So Rebecca Hall, for those who do, well, people know her as an actor for... I'm thinking Vicky Cristina Barcelona, The Illusionist, is that what that was called, with Scarlett Johansson?
The Prestige.
Prestige,
Mm-hmm.
Similar time, different movie. Her father, Peter Hall, is very significant in the British theatre, so he set up the Royal Shakespeare Company, was the artistic director as well at the National Theatre. Really significant in his impact. So it wouldn't surprise me that Rebecca Hall would be a great director or storyteller, as well as I think she's a very good actor.
Mm-hmm.
I would have Oscar nominated her for Vicky Cristina Barcelona, I think. I think she's very good there. Anyway, so yeah, I was so excited. And this story of, I guess it was, so Tessa Thompson is the lead. She has her life in Brooklyn with her husband and her two children, 2 sons. She is a housewife, she fundraises, and she is shopping for the day. It's very hard. It's all very like sensual from the very start.
Yes, it is.
And well, the first time we meet her, she's picking up a gollywog for these two white women. Awkward. And then she's like, oh, I need somewhere for tea. She doesn't talk like that. I don't know why I want to keep doing this accent. She goes somewhere for tea, and lo and behold, someone is staring directly down at her.
So intense.
But is staring directly at us. And I can't think of a more arresting introduction of a character. Like, we've had characters enter in very dramatic ways, and all, like Kate Winslet with her hat in Titanic and all that sort of thing. But Ruth Negga staring at Tessa Thompson, who she does not recognize because Ruth Negga's character, Claire, is passing as white. So when she comes up, as we've heard at the start of this episode, and introduces herself, or says, do you remember me? Tessa Thompson does not. And then she laughs and she gets it. And the film is about all the different ways that the characters and, by us as an audience watching, how people pass. And I think, and because I obviously watched it, because I'm a huge film buff and was excited for it, watched it when it first came out and rewatched it for this, the second time I was really struck by how all of the characters are finding ways to live a life in a kind of shitty scenario of 1920s America, which, to be honest, not far off many things today. They're trying to find little bits of joy, and the destruction that causes is what is like so fascinating to me in this movie. And Claire, Ruth Negga's character, is undoubtedly the most exciting part of it, even though she's really not in it as much as I remembered the first time I watched it. She is a very supporting character. She's almost like this person who walks in and fucks up Tessa Thompson's character's life. And it's just about how Tessa navigates through that. It is so fascinating. It's on Netflix. I don't know what you're doing and listening to us when you could be listening or watching that movie instead.
Well, yes, I second everything. It's incredible. I have to go back to the shot that you described as being kind of the most arresting intro to a character, because it is, like, I think it's the best maybe single kind of shot or sequence in film of the year, potentially, just because it's so unusual. I think it plays like something you'd maybe only see in a horror or thriller. Like, the fact she's just there and you're aware of this person looking, and then you get the perspective of Tessa Thompson's character scanning the room, and then you pass her face and you can see her staring at you, and the camera keeps going and it cuts to Tessa Thompson, who is looking around like she's very aware of it, and it's scary for a moment, but you are like, who is this? Like, I need more, I need to know. And as she approaches, like, I think it's something most familiar in like horrors and thrillers, and that's not how the film plays out, even though I think it's kind of laced with those motifs.
But also it's like the social anxiety. If you are, you're a black woman in that space, a white woman's approaching
that's a
you.
good point.
So I think that's very intentional, and I think it's really fascinating. Because it's also flipped on its head later when Tessa Thompson's at a party and is staring at Ruth Negga with her husband, Tessa Thompson's husband, and it's her staring at them, and it's all her perspective, and you hear she's trying to zone in on these people.
Yeah.
It's a very, I think Rebecca Hall does such an amazing job. I think it totally is intentional. That sort of that anxiety it creates within the viewer of Ruth approaching in quite like shark-like way.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's interesting. I think that's why it feels incredibly accomplished, and you wouldn't think this is a first-time director, because all of the choices feel intentional and not in a forced or cardboard kind of way. It's all really interesting. A lot of the shots are very cut off, and like you say, with the perspective kind of very honing in on characters, looking really, really looking in on people. There's so much about it that fascinates me. It feels so kind of clean and neat and elegant, and I've read some reviews where they've suggested it's like too much like that. I disagree. I think you can feel the kind of presence of a clear vision throughout it, and I think it's therefore, with it always being intentional, it is loaded with Rebecca Hall's vision, and it's executed so brilliantly. And the undertones of so much more than just what it is discussing about race and passing and these characters doing this. There's an overwhelming queerness to the film. In a great way. I mean, you don't know if these characters are, terrified of each other or not terrified of each other, because that's not true, but have a disdain for each other, or a kind of, they don't understand the other person a lot of the time, but sometimes you think that they probably want to rip each other's clothes off. It's magnetic, but I think that's what makes it really thrilling. I feel like this represents a feeling which I haven't really seen shown on screen before, is where, I don't know, almost like coming round to someone you've told yourself you're not going to like because you have different beliefs, you come from different avenues, whatever it might be, and you getting to the point of having to justify it to yourself and those around you, and how you deal with that, and then something, because you've decided at a point to close yourself off to it, or are turned off by it, makes it more alluring and irresistible. And you feel that pull from each one, specifically towards Ruth Negga's Claire, who is just so magnetic. But you do also feel the flip of that, because Tessa Thompson's character is, again, the flip and the thing that Claire has run away from. And I find that inner conflict and how that is expressed on screen to be terrific. I really thought this film was incredible when I watched it the first time. I think it was even better when I watched it today. Yeah, and it is shocking. I can't understand how it isn't a big Oscar player. Say they did snub, they have snubbed Ruth. Now, that maybe would be easier to accept if it was actually celebrated anywhere else. I just don't understand how this film was totally ignored. I get it, maybe Netflix had so many films on their plate. Obviously, Power of the Dog, The Lost Daughter, which probably did better than maybe they were assuming. They had so many players that something had to drop, but it seems shocking that Passing would be the one. I see what you're saying. The film as a whole, yeah. It's strange. I think it's so... Because Tessa Thompson, the script, the cinematography, there's so much to it. Everything for me about this film works. Everything. And, if critics or audiences feel differently about it, I think they're going to feel differently in 10 years' time. I think it will be looked at as if not perfect, a near perfect film. Oh yeah, and that will happen because Rebecca Hall undoubtedly will make more great films, and then they'll go, we should have been paying attention. Yeah, exactly. That now, and I'll put all my dollars on that. I've no money, but well, all of them anyway. But I'll be putting my 2 cents on that. No, I love it, and Ruth, she's electric in it in a way that say Loving really capitalizes on her ability to be quietly revolutionary. I guess is actually a really good way to sum up how Mildred Loving is presented, and I'm sure is in real life. Was in real life. In this, she is desperate. She's in a cage and trying to burst out, and there's this sense of passion that is she's bubbling the whole time. It is the opposite of passive. It is, even when she's not saying anything, the way she's looking, she's just ready to jump. She's ready to do anything to be part of feeling alive. And I just find it mesmerizing. I just think how there's not many performances I can think of that quite capture that energy, and particularly for someone who Ruth Negga seems in person quite shy, quite by her own admission. Not anywhere near Claire in this way, but God, she's just enjoying herself, and I think it would be very hard for the film to work if the person playing Claire didn't balance all this sort of
quite negative behaviour. Like, there's a part in the movie where she openly says, I'm going to be an asshole. She is an asshole. She is pretty awful to the characters around her. And yet there's something almost admirable about what she's doing, even though it is wrong. Like, it is very wrong, a lot of the actions in the film. So, I don't know. I personally, and maybe this is a good way to round it off, but I would have voted for her to win. And there was a part of me that thought she was going to get nominated and then win.
Oh, I was sure of it. Until the Ariana DeBose, until her kind of trajectory launched, I was absolutely sure that that's what was going to happen. In the same way that I was sure a few years ago that J-Lo was going to win.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I was certain. How can you ignore the most electrifying and magnetic performance of the year? Oh, you have. Oh.
Well, that's racism and sexism, because
Exactly.
those characters don't fit what they want.
It's
like, it's all, but again, Ariana DeBose, if she was to win, I mean, maybe Judi Dench will win for Belfast, and when people listen back on this, like, what the fuck, I will say on the flip side, I was delighted Jessie Buckley is an Oscar nominee, but her performance is very good in Lost Daughter. I cannot see a comparison between what she's doing there and Ruth Negga in Passing.
Yeah.
But then again, this is why awards and all this is crazy. Like, I wouldn't be able to compare them. No,
because they are. I think they're both exceptional. Like, if you're talking about those two in particular, they're both exceptional. But this is star. Like I said, a star turn. This character behaves like they are a star, like you're saying, forging their own path. You can feel it. The energy is so strong. This is as charismatic a performance as there has ever been on screen. And really interestingly, I was listening to her on Mark Kermode's podcast, and they were questioning, like, how do you play charisma? And she was like, well, how do you play charisma? I don't know. And I think the answer is that you have to just, it has to be in there somewhere, because she is such a chameleon. In every film we've talked about, she is so absolutely different that I think she can turn her hand to anything because she has that gift.
Yes, and I've no doubt that her career will just continue to grow and grow and grow. Like, she's playing Josephine Baker in a TV series. That's, I think, after this Macbeth production. So yeah, I've all the dreams and hopes for her.
Yeah, it'll happen. I think that's.
They'll be like Saoirse Ronan who? No. Again, I'm delighted there's all these very incredibly talented Irish women and men, I'm sure if we want to talk about Colin Farrell and whoever the fuck else. But I would prefer to talk about Jessie Buckley and Fiona Shaw and Saoirse Ronan and Ruth and many others.
And many others. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day to one and all. So, and buy me a drink if you see me in a pub. That just goes without saying, regardless of St. Patrick's Day. I'm really dreading whatever quiz you have prepared for this.
Oh no!
But I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you're dreading it, then you should set your own prize. If you manage to make it out on the other side.
What would my prize be? To get Rebecca Hall to have any budget she wanted for whatever next film she wants to make.
That is a fabulous prize, and I accept. I think we'll grant you a win, even if you get none of these correct.
Exactly. That would be so cruel. That actually is really strategic of me if I was that clever to have thought ahead.
Before we do the quiz, Michael has won. Congratulations, Michael. Well done. Okie doke. So, happy St. Patrick's Day again. As the stereotype goes, Irish people can't make it very long without breaking into a sing-song.
I think you said without a drink. And
well,
I thought you were looking at me
drink.
because I was having a drink.
You drink. So both of those are true. But we're going to go for the sing-song stereotype right now. I've got some clips from some Irish-centred films where there is breaking into song. And I just need to know what film these are from.
Okay. I just want to say, Irish people, it's not our fault that our voices are so naturally beautiful that we need to share it. And I'm really glad that the stereotype is... Do you know, I hadn't even clocked it until you said it, but it's true.
Yeah.
Even Belfast ends with your man
Yeah.
bursting into everlasting love. You're like, oh, this has nothing to do with the funeral, but I love it.
But it's a nice thing. I think it comes from the idea that people think that, you know, non-Irish people, we can go to an Irish pub if we want to hear live music, like it's guaranteed.
Oh my God, and that's something from coming back to London. Where is the live music in the same way?
So, I mean, at least it does come from, I guess, through somewhere that you can count on Irish for music being present.
You've made me miss home.
Aww.
You've made me miss
Get
home.
over it. Okie doke. Here comes your first clip.
So it's an Irish accent, or actually Irish language.
Need some help?
No, I just did it there.
Well, no, you can do that first, and then you can get.
No, I'm just nervous to go. So it's Irish language, which makes me think it's an Irish, made by Irish people, and it's an Irish story aimed at Irish audiences, but must have been more mainstream than some of the like specific Irish movies that would have Irish language in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to guess Brooklyn.
Then that would be a very good guess. Well done.
That's absurd. Anyway, I can act. I'm not really
Hammy.
Yeah. What a beautiful moment. I mean, we already talked. You already made me homesick about not having live music, but that moment of those men in that soup kitchen, kind of connecting and like with home, is really beautiful.
It is. It's a really beautiful sequence in a beautiful film. I can't say enough good things about Brooklyn. It's a wonderful film that I feel anyone could sit in front of and have a great time with.
Funny you say that. A lot of Irish people don't like it.
Oh,
well, not a lot. Like but there is you know, it's very twee. Like she's very passive as a woman. You know, this whole like stereotype, like Irish people have to leave the country to make themselves. I'm not trying to disagree because I love the movie. It's an interesting. I've had lots of fascinating conversations about Brooklyn, Ailish, which is the character Saoirse Ronan plays, her like battle with the two men, Jim Broadbent's terrible accent, things like that.
Okay, well done. Let's have another.
Till our wedding day.
I also had the Liam Neeson bit.
Bula boss all around. That is the one and only Irish Julia Roberts.
The very, very Irish Julia
Jesus
Roberts.
Mihal.
In what film?
Oh, Michael Collins. I mean, that's imprinted in my mind. Oh my God, and she sings it again, and she's buying the wedding dress as he's gotten the cork and he's going to be shot, and it's a beautiful movie.
Oh, beautiful. Well, you did very, very well there.
Thank you. Rebecca, your movie's coming.
Which is also very important. Beautiful work.
But now I need to go to therapy, seeing as you've opened up this can of worms of emotion.
Boo-hoo.
But let's put that emotion into the future. So we've already mentioned that Ruth is going to be playing Josephine Baker. But what else would we dream for this very talented Miss Negga? That doesn't really work. The talented Mr. Ripley doesn't really work when you... But anyway.
That was crap, but...
I try.
We go with it. Well, I'm going to kick us off with the one that I don't really have much to say about, and maybe you're going to have something more interesting. So we like to think of, if we were to take one of the performers' films and then have a sequel to it, which would we choose? By default, I went to Breakfast on Pluto because I'd be interested in seeing her character, maybe.
For those you cannot see this, Scott looks so nervous, or I don't even know if it's nerves. It's like just uncertain.
But then, or maybe Ad Astra, and they actually give her some time, and it's just her, and you know. But then there's so much time. She's born in space. She's there, like.
Yeah.
But
And were you thinking of any like filmmakers or any like who would Neil Jordan be back or James Gray or James Gray? Now I'm realizing the clue is in the title. Grey, dull.
It would be Claire Denis after her work on High Life.
That actually, you know what? That's it. You saw the sequel to Ad Astra by Claire Denis with Ruth Negga. I'm there. I love it.
Good. That wasn't even my idea for a later one. But what about you? What did you come up with there?
Sorry. So, despite me saying I didn't want to see, or I thought it was time to move on from Breakfast on Pluto, I do think there could be something interesting if there was a sequel. You know, recasting Cillian Murphy, having trans creatives involved. Maybe there's something there, but I think you're dead right. Like, for this thing we usually do about a sequel to an existing movie, it doesn't really offer us a wealth of opportunities. But I am going to sign up to your Claire Denis Ad Astra.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad I managed to make that work. Okay, and then let's look at remaking another film or recasting. So, I mean, there's something so beguiling about Ruth Negga's screen presence. And I don't know why, but this is... Well, I do know why, because it's beguiling, but it's strangely that this is the film that
Beguile.
just popped into my head.
If it's the Beguile where she plays all the parts,
She plays all the parts in the Beguiled. No. It's a film called Night Tides. Have you seen Night Tides? A Dennis Hopper film from maybe like the 60s.
Whoa.
About a man who falls in love with this woman who works in this carnival, who she plays a mermaid, but then he starts to think, actually, this woman is a mermaid in real life, and she's got this dark secret. By the way, this film, I believe, is still on Mubi. It's really terrific and worth watching. And
What's
I
it
feel
again?
like Night Tides. Mm-hmm. And her as this really mysterious central character would be a really wonderful thing. I don't know then who would play Dennis Hopper's part. Someone... who do I want there?
Do they have to be wild, or what's the characteristic?
No, he's not actually that wild in it compared to what we then got to know him for. He's pretty straight.
Brad Pitt again?
Yeah, well, I would take Brad in it. Brad and
Brad.
Ruth Negga. That's a real sexy situation going on. Why not? But yeah, just it's what came to my head first of all when I was like, what, using her beguiling presence, and I was like, ooh, Night Tides. And I really recommend watching that film anyway. So that's my answer.
So I truly believe that Ruth can do anything, and there's a movie which if I could choose one film to be made all the time, not because it has to be, but because I feel like it's just such a gift for the actor in the main part, but also for the audience watching them, it would be Certified Copy, which is Abbas Kiarostami's film, which stars Juliette Binoche, which to me is a perfect film.
Yeah,
I
okay.
absolutely love it. But without spoiling it, the film is all about reality, authenticity, connection to things, artistically, personal, intimacy, and you're not ever quite sure of what is real and what's not within the story and the two characters that we're following. I would absolutely love to see Ruth Negga chew on that sort of material. I think it would be fascinating to watch her in that sort of part.
Yeah.
So if we're remaking a film, I basically was thinking of all these performances. Like another film I was thinking about was sorry, let me get the name of it because I always get it wrong. Another film I was thinking about was 2 Days, One Night, the Dardenne brothers film with Marion Cotillard, who plays a woman who is recovering from depression and has to encourage her co-workers to vote to keep her in, and by doing that sacrifice their a bonus, an extra money for them, and it is intense. I just want to see a film that follows her and has her fully as the lead character, and we're immersed in her world. So those are two examples that came to my mind.
No, that's good. I actually, whilst you've been talking, I have also just thought of another one, which I have to now say really quickly, talking about a beguiling and mysterious presence. I want to see them redo The Great Gatsby with her as Gatsby.
Yeah.
An all-woman Great Gatsby. Or just gender-flipped Gatsby, and she's Gatsby. That's
my God, we could have Cody Smith, whatever his name is, as Daisy.
Yes! Oh my God, that's such a great idea. Perfect. Okay, no, they're pitching that as well. But otherwise, thinking about her working with a filmmaker or just in a new situation, we had Rebecca Hall this year doing Passing, first feature film actress, doing amazing things. The other person who did that was Maggie Gyllenhaal doing The Lost Daughter. And I think, based on what she set up for the women in that film, namely Olivia Colman, but also the other performers, she
Dakota Johnson. I just obsessed with Dakota Johnson.
Everyone in that film, but she could write something amazing and direct Ruth Negga amazingly well in something she wanted to do. I'm not necessarily sure what, but something exciting. Weirdly thinking about kind of unworkable pieces of literature, because I'm interested in, and I think that Maggie Gyllenhaal does a good job of grappling with things that might be tricky. Weirdly, I thought about Jonathan Franzen's novel Freedom, which came out, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago. And I think a lot of that book is icky and problematic, and I just get a real sense he doesn't like the lead female characters in it. But a lot of that novel is really terrific. I think if she was to make that and have Ruth Negga as the lead character of Patty, she could bring way more into that, way more empathy for this character, which feels missing when I read the novel. But also, that novel's absolutely ginormous. It would have to be a mini-series, so maybe that's a defunct answer. But either way, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Ruth Negga, please.
Yeah. Well, mine maybe more straightforward in that she's already worked with Steve McQueen, but we never got to see that. I would love to see them reunite. Steve McQueen, like in particular, like he did this amazing, like they're I guess TV films, but that feels like that diminishes what they really are. The Small Axe series, and there was one in particular, and that name is, what is the one?
Lovers Rock.
Yeah, there was Lovers Rock, which was really just spending an evening like at this party. And I would love something along those lines, which is as glorious to spend time with just characters enjoying themselves and, maybe falling in love and, trying to connect with each other and community, and just it's glorious. It's like such a wonderful film. So I think that could be such a fruitful combination of what she can achieve in terms of visually performing, or she can deliver whatever it would be needed. He's also, historically interested in like the North, so there is potentially something there. Like his first film was Hunger, about the hunger strikes, and obviously has collaborated with Michael Fassbender often. But I would love if there was something that came of that.
Yeah, absolutely. A wonderful show.
But I have no doubt whatever happens in the future, that is going to be amazing. I am properly excited.
Yeah, and I think, despite us talking about this as a snub, I think this is the film which is going to put a lot more opportunities her way, which I think should have happened after Loving, and honestly hasn't felt like it yet. But this just feels too undeniable to ignore. So yeah, I'm confident that she's going to have an exciting career. But I will be delighted to see anything she does. I'm now a massive fan.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, it's so lovely. Again, I don't know, spreading the word sounds silly because I'm just one person, but just be getting even one other person to enjoy and celebrate Ruth as much as I have, and like, you know, Irish people more generally, I imagine, have. Yeah, she's terrific. So what a wonderful way to mark this year's Oscars and to mark St. Patrick's Day, if you're lucky enough to be listening on the first day of this episode's release.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's been an absolute joy. She's so interesting, so it really has been a pleasure. But if anyone wants to drop us a line and let us know who we should maybe talk about next, or if they have any strong feelings of Ruth Negga and they just want to share them, where can the listeners find us, Michael?
So we're on Instagram and Twitter at don'tknowher_pod. And you can also email us on don'tknowherpod@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And please do share the podcast if you enjoy it. Hopefully, if you've made it to this point, you are enjoying our podcast. Please do share it with one person, with 100 people. We appreciate everything. And please go on to whichever listening platform you have chosen and, you know, subscribe, follow, rate us 5 stars. It really helps.
Don't be rating us if it's under 5 stars.
Yeah, no, if it's under 5, it's best you don't. But most of all, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Don't Know Her. And we will join you next time for more celebrations of performers who we adore.
Yes, and specifically, it is a very important anniversary of one of the most Oscar nominated and winning films. So those who know the Oscars or can Google will know what film it is, and if you can guess the person before we announce it, you'll get some sort of prize to be determined at some point in the future. But I cannot wait to talk about this person.
Yeah, very exciting. All right, but until then, Michael, I hope you have a fabulous day, and to all of you listening at home, bye-bye.
Goodbye.